So the Left Behind Child, it's coming out in July next year from, again, my publisher, Penguin Random House, Chaco and Windus. It is a story of a left behind child, of course, um, a Filipino young person called Neneng, and she was left behind by her mother, Rosa, who migrated abroad. To be fair, I really don't know which excerpt I was going to read for you, purely because I haven't really come back to the novel since the editing process. We're in a very later part of publishing journey. But perhaps I just want to talk to you a little bit about the Left Behind Child. As you know, I was left behind. I spent, but this novel is not about me. Disclaimer: fiction, completely fiction. You always say that. Left Behind Child. I think it was really important to shed light on the narratives of young people who are left behind, especially during the formative years of their lives. This particular character, Neneng, she was left behind when she was 12, between 12 and 16, so 4 important years. And of course, those 4 important years are not just like mere years. Those are the years when we go to high school, when we get our regla. Not all of us are like the girls, but we get our first crushes. The book also looks into an idea of the mythological creature Bakunawa, the serpent dragon who comes out from the waters to eat the full moon. And I guess this character, throughout the book, she was thinking of her heart as the Bakunawa, as this mythical serpent dragon. So I'll read the prologue and I guess a few paragraphs from the beginning, and then we'll stop. But thank you so much for inviting me. It's been a pleasure to speak with you and to have such an attentive readers and listeners. Thank you. The Left Behind Child. Prologue. Lipa, Philippines, 1996. Beneath the yellow dome of the mosquito net, Ma and I sat cross-legged on a reed mat, facing each other. Her finger trailed down my arm, dabbing ointment on each mosquito bite. The sharp scent of crushed camphor rose in the violet air. When she finished, I lay down beside her, ear to her chest. I could feel the vibration of her words as she began another tale. The Bakunawa's iridescent scales shift between amber and jade green, she said. It rises from the waters and glides through the dark clouds. Decades ago, when our river was still clean and high, the villagers swore they used to see the Bakunawa, the mythical serpent dragon there. The devotees of San Sebastian stopped their prayers when they felt the marble floor shaking beneath their knees, Ma said. I imagined the worshippers murmuring under their lace veils, the Bakunawa slithering through the secret underground channels of our town. Ma continued. Its colossal mouth snaps shut, devouring the moon, she said. And that's how an eclipse happens. That's how all darkness begins. Year of the Snake, January 2001. My mother dabbed her finger against my cheek, lifting a fallen eyelash. Humiling ka, she said, urging me to make a wish. I wished she wouldn't leave. I wished to hear the air rip as she unzipped her luggage, to see her throw her clothes back into the cabinet in the corner of our room. I wish I would find her standing by the stove tomorrow morning, just like every day before she left for the hospital. Gold steam, thick with a kick of ginger and garlic, fogging up the space around her as she stirred a pot, our kitchen singing with familiar clangs. I was almost 12, and my breasts had just started to bloom. The other day, one of the girls at school had been showing off her new baby bra. She tugged at her collar and showed us the strap, embroidered with daisies. It was a gift from her mother, she said, to mark her pagdadalaga, becoming a young woman. The other girl's stories sounded terrifying and exciting at the same time, but who could I talk to about these things if my mother was leaving? Ma was going to work as a nurse in the Middle East. Over there, Tita Beng, my mother's younger sister, pointed towards the hills that loomed above the corrugated iron roofs of San Pedro Street. Over there, you'll find the Middle East. Since we had heard that she got a job, I had started dreaming about running, about reaching that silver horizon. Your mother will send baby bras for you and your sister, Toblerones for your brother too, my aunt added. Her tired face lit up with childish excitement at the thought of balikbayan boxes, the massive boxes of gifts that Filipinos overseas would send home from their jobs abroad, filled over time while they were away. Our goodbye was short, barely an exhale. My mother leaned in, a bone-stiff hug, so long and tight my lungs and heart were squeezed till I nearly choked. Take care of everyone, Neneng, she said. And look after your lungs. She placed her 2 palms on my chest, gently. My 14-year-old brother, Kuya Kidlat, and little sister, Hiyas, stood behind me. Their reactions were only a blur. Maybe like me, they fought the urge to cry. But I didn't care. My own chest hurt too much to look. And my father stood to the side, blank-faced, as if he didn't belong to our family at all. My mother's family were there too, gathered outside their own house by the jackfruit tree in our front yard. Tita Beng, always tearful, buried her face in her powder-pink handkerchief, blowing sobs the size of a monsoon. My brother, Tito Malas, was fidgeting, scraping the flaking skin of one foot over the other, clearly having spent the night downing home-brewed coconut wine. Ma's father, Tatay Lolo, was behind me, and now placed a hand on my shoulder as if trying to reassure. But since my grandmother's death a few years earlier, Tatay Lolo had become an old man. His touch was light. I put my hand firmly over his. My mother's whispers echoed in my ears. Take care of everyone, Neneng. None of the adults could do it, I realized. But I could, I thought. Even if my nickname, Neneng, meant little girl, I would. That was what Ma had wished for me. My chest tightened, but I wouldn't fail her. Ma blew my eyelash off the tip of her finger, and then she was gone. Thank you.